Hello, I'm Scott, and this is my Sprinter, and over the next 3 months I'm going to be converting it from a standard cargo van to a camper van. It's a 2025 all-wheel drive, long wheelbase, high roof. It hasn't had any major modifications done to it yet. During my day job I'm a programmer, but I've taken 3 months off to do something completely unrelated to programming or computers. Big project, wanted to do something, test my skills in another area, so I'm going to be converting this over the next 3 months. So far, I haven't done too much to the van. I've done a bunch of planning, a bunch of buying. I've taped out some broad plans of what I'll be doing, and I'll be showing how I plan things out later in the video, both in the sketching up and doing things on a computer, which I was very happy with. So far, the van has not been modified too much. I've been saving it up for my 3 months off. I've done one change, one modification, and that is to install Mondo mudguards to give me the option of potentially installing bigger or wider or more off-road ready tires later on. But I have not organized those tires yet. Just giving myself options. It's a pretty common mod. I live in a city, Melbourne, so I don't have a lot of space to do this conversion myself. Luckily, my parents have a bit of spare space, although I have been taking up a lot of their garage with my crap while I've been building this up and getting ready for this conversion. So this big pile of stuff in the middle of this garage is all the stuff that's got to go into the van, and there is still more stuff to come. Also, that big pile of foam there, that's my insulation for going under the floor in the van. I've also bought a large amount of various sizes, thicknesses of wood of different kinds to build out the inside of the van. I got to get all this into the van, and I've still got more stuff coming. But before I do that, I'm going to show you a bit more about how I planned the van and how I got to this point where I was ready to take a bunch of time off work and actually start work on this. The first thing I did when I was planning out the layout for my van conversion was I went inside the van and I took a 3D scan of the inside of the van. I could then post-process that capture into a 3D model that I then brought into the Unity game engine. My programming background is in game development, primarily in Unity, and when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, so I ended up using Unity for the rough layout planning for the van. What you're seeing here looks a bit weird because it's only a capture from the inside, so if you're trying to look from the outside, it all looks very messed up. But if I just go in here, inside the van, you can see the very rough shape of the inside of the van. This doesn't need to be a high quality model, so the main important thing is the general shape and dimensions. Looking inside this model, you can see all the main parts that we'd have to be concerned with when doing the layout. So from here, I started playing around with very rough layouts, using very basic shapes, because I am no artist and I couldn't be bothered bringing in proper 3D models. I had a couple of layouts in mind which I tried mocking up and seeing how they would feel in the space. The first one I tried was a Murphy bed. This might not make a lot of sense to anyone looking at this, but the upright green is what the bed would be like when it's stowed away in its Murphy state, and the horizontal green cube is where it would be when it was folded down into its horizontal sleeping state. The next layout I tried was 2 singles. So in my layout, I need to try and fit 2 people, myself and my wife. Having a double bed would be ideal so that we could sleep in the same bed, but because space is a premium, I thought maybe 2 single beds might be able to give me a lot more space. But this didn't really pan out because you wouldn't have a lot of vertical space above you, and I think it would feel too cramped. The next layout is the classic fixed bed layout, where you just have the fixed bed in the back going sideways, and where you would end up having flares if you needed a lot of extra space. This is what I ended up going with, but I'll come back to that in a second. I was continuing to play around with the Murphy bed and the single bed idea, where these green cubes would be the beds that would fold up into the yellow, so you would have some extra space here. And the final one I was playing around was 2 single beds again, but this time being Murphy beds that fold down into a shared double bed. I couldn't find any interesting layouts that worked that wouldn't take up the extra space that I was trying to save by having interesting ways of dealing with the bed. So I ended up just going back to the fixed bed, and that is what I am sticking with. Once I decided to have a fixed bed in the back, I started to play around with where other stuff would go. So this is even more chaotic for anyone who isn't me to try and understand, but I decided that I wanted to try and fit in extra seating that was road legal so people could actually travel in there. I would have 4 seats total for people that can travel with. So that's what the seating is here. I would then have a lagoon table in the center between those seats. I'm actually going to have these seats be able to fold up. So most of the time when it's just myself and my wife traveling, we will just use the front 2 seats that are on a swivel, and then this lagoon table would be for a workstation and anything else that we might need for like eating and whatnot. Going in here, this is where the kitchen island would be. This is where the sink and the stovetop and drawers would be, and with some extra storage above potentially. And this big yellow cube is where I'm going to have the bathroom, which will contain both a toilet and a shower. I haven't got exact dimensions because some of it's going to be more about how it feels once I start building it out, but I did do 2 more things to try and work out the layout and make sure it feels good. First, I cardboard prototyped the entire layout in broad strokes, which I'll show a few images of here. This helped me walk through the space and make sure that nothing was feeling too cramped and it wasn't going to feel like it was too claustrophobic. That worked out well and I didn't have any real problems with it. I was able to work out that a 50 centimeter walkway between the bathroom and the kitchen was adequate. That wouldn't feel too squished. And from that, I was able to feel pretty confident that things were going to work out all right. I did draw up some basic plans as well that I was required to do for my toilet installation. I'm going with an incinerating toilet, which has extra requirements over normal caravan toilets, namely that there is fire, it produces heat, and they needed to know that it wasn't going to be too close to other things that were flammable, and there was going to be enough space on the roof for the outlet that can get quite hot, so it can't be too close to anything. Before I did draw up those plans, I was working out what I would be able to fit on the roof, and I did that again in Unity, just in a very basic way. The important things I wanted to work out with the roof is how many solar panels I could fit on there, which are these blue cubes. I'm going to be able to hopefully fit 6 panels of 100 watt each, so 600 watts of total solar power input. I don't have super detailed plans about what I'm going to do, as I think there'll be things that come up that I couldn't plan for, so I didn't want to go too detailed. I didn't know exactly how thick the wood was going to be, how curved the walls would be or anything like that, so I didn't bother working it out all exactly, but I think this is enough to get started working on the van, and anything else that I missed or I haven't a plan for, I can work out on the way. Things will be very fluid, and I'm okay with that. Now that I've shown you how I've planned out the conversion and what I'm going to do, it's now time to start actually converting the van. And the first stage that some people call the putting holes in the van stage is probably the scariest stage from what I've heard online. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install 2 new windows on the side here. One here and one in that opposite side. So two new windows. After that, I've got 3 fans to put into the roof, more holes to cut there, and then I've also got a roof rack to put in. Lots of cutting, lots of measuring. This will take up my first week, I imagine, where I'll just be cutting holes and installing things and making sure that everything is watertight after I've cut a bunch of holes and things. So I guess let's get to it. I'll mostly just be filming things as time lapses to start with, just because I'm not a great filmmaker, I'm still learning. But I think time lapses give you a great overview of what gets done, and I'll be putting labels up on screen to show what I'm doing during these time lapses. And I'll also be getting multiple different angles in those time lapses to hopefully get some interesting shots and give you a good overview of what I'm doing while I'm doing it. And with all that said, let's get to it. And that is the end of week 1. I have some absolutely terrible hair going on because I have been wearing a hat all day because it's been quite sunny out and I've been working on the roof, and we'll just have to deal with that. So week 1 down, I only worked 4 days this week. I kind of expected this to be the case, but after being an office worker for many years, trying to go into nothing but manual labor full time proved to be too much for me. So I had to take Thursday off and recover. I need to build up that tolerance again, but I'm sure that will come with time. I got less done this week than I was hoping, but I still made good progress. You would have seen most of what I got done in the time lapses, but I'll give you a quick overview of what I got done in non-time lapse mode, and so you can get a bit more of a view of what I did. And I'll also give some explanations of what I did and what I got wrong, because it was a big learning experience for some of the things I did this week, and I did not do them all super well. But I'm learning, and I'm going to get faster, and I'm going to get better over time. And I want to record what I did that was good, as well as what I did that was bad. I don't want to make it look like I am an expert at this, because I am definitely not. So the first things I did was I installed 2 windows this week, one on either side, which I will show off now. This is the first window that I did, and please ignore the paper that's just taped on the inside. That's not actually something that's wrong. That was just to protect myself from the heat that was happening over the last few days. It was getting very warm in the van just from that heat coming in with the new windows, so I had to just cover things up. This window, being my first window, had a lot of issues. I was trying to use a jigsaw to start with, and that didn't turn out very well. I then changed to a handsaw, and that worked a lot better, but I still made a lot of mistakes, and it's not super even on the inside. You can't see it from the outside. What I did that was wrong on the outside was I did not tape when I was doing the primer, and the primer kind of went everywhere. I was able to get most of it off, but there is now a decent stain there that will not come off. Amongst my various mistakes that I made, the one reoccurring theme was a lot of coloring outside the lines, and that caused a lot of obvious overspill, or I guess it's obvious if you're looking close. From afar, it's probably not super obvious, but all around this seam, there are various parts that are overages that I can't do much about now, except I will probably end up just painting the entire van when I'm done. This will get away from the fact that it's just a plain white van at the moment, and that's not super interesting. So I will probably want to paint it anyway, and that will clean up a lot of those mistakes when I just cover them with paint. The good stuff is that they went in fine. There wasn't any big leakage that caused a lot of issues, and I have water tested them and they seem to be watertight, which is always great. Looking at the windows on the inside from a distance, they look pretty good, but there are some issues that will be a bit obvious if you're looking for them. Primer on the window, I did a lot of overspill, which may or may not be visible in the video, but I'm probably going to cover up a bunch of this as I build out the walls anyway. I had a few issues with the handsaw where I was knocking against this metal and ditched it. This is just anti-rust paint, so not a big deal. This will all be covered anyway by the walls when they go in. I also didn't cut this super straight, so I'm not sure if this will come through in the video, but these lines on this gasket, not super straight, but again, that gasket is quite likely to be covered by the walls at some point. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that, but we will see how that goes. A lot of these sins and issues will probably just be covered by other parts of the build that will cover them up, so I'm not too worried about it now, and as I go, I'm just going to get better and better. Another thing we did this week, although it wasn't me, it was my wife. She doesn't want to be included in these videos, so I did not capture time lapses or include time lapses of the work that she did, but she did all the soundproofing or the sound dampening. So around the wheels, up here on the walls and on the floor, that will hopefully decrease the level of sound that will happen as we're driving along. That's only the first level of sound dampening. There will also be insulation on the floor, the walls and the roof. The insulation and the wood for the walls and the floors will also do a lot of sound dampening, but this is just the first pass. And the final thing I did this week was install most of the roof rack. There are still many sideways slats to install on the roof rack, but I'm leaving them out. I needed to install the roof rack now because the next thing I want to install is the Max Air fans. I have 2 of them that will be installed on the roof, And to get the most solar I can on the roof, I will have to install one Maxxair fan right at the front of the roof and one right at the back. And those will be butting up against the front and the back of the roof rack. So I needed to install the roof rack so I could know where I could install the roof fans. So that will be the first thing I install next week, will be those fans. So yeah, that's me done for the first week. Next week we'll be installing Maxxair fans on the roof and hopefully my flares if they turn up. So next week I'll continue making progress and continue posting weekly update videos. So see you then.